I recently had to use Logstash to ingest relational data from a MySQL database and output it to Elasticsearch. I thought it would be useful if I document my process. In this video, I will perform two quick demonstrations. In my first demonstration, I will walk through the guide shown on the Elasticsearch website, which you can see on my screen right now. This guide is very basic and just consumes a single MySQL table. In my second demonstration, I will ingest data from a more complex relational database model as shown on the screen. I'll show how you can preserve some of the relationships while writing data to Elasticsearch. Before we begin, let me explain my setup. I've already set up Elasticsearch instance at elastic.evermite.net. If you're not sure how to do this, you can watch one of my videos on how to set up Elasticsearch or set up the Elastic cluster. I'll leave links in the video description below. The only other thing used in this video is an Ubuntu instance, which I will install MySQL and Logstash to. For practice purposes, you could put this on the same server as your Elasticsearch server. For me, I decided to make a separate virtual machine on my office network somewhere. And one final housekeeping item. If you find this video helpful, then give it a like. You can also subscribe to our channel if you want to be informed of videos as we release them. If you run into any issues, you can leave a comment below or contact us through our website. The Elasticsearch community on Slack is also very helpful, and also their website, discuss.elastic.co, are also very helpful. So let's get started. This is a new instance of Ubuntu 20.04 running in a virtual machine somewhere in my office. And I'm going to do an update to the distribution and download the usual things that I would need to work with. So apt-get update and apt-dist upgrade -y and apt-get install vim curl newpg and gpg. So I'll pause until this is done. Okay, so the distribution is updated. So next, I want to install MySQL or the MySQL server, just because the first step is I want to put some data into a database first before I can ingest it. So let's go ahead and install MySQL. apt-get install -y MySQL -server, and we'll let this thing go. Okay, the MySQL installation is done. So let's get some very basic MySQL data into the database. I'm going to pull up the Elastic documentation on how to configure MySQL and Logstash, and I'm just following this guide step by step. So I'm going to scroll down because the first thing we will want to do is create a very simple MySQL table. Let me actually log into my MySQL instance first. MySQL. All right, now let's create a database called ES_DB. And let me just use that database. Now let's create a very simple table, just a few columns. It has no relationship to any other table. All right, now let's scroll down and insert some test values. And now let's just make sure that all the values are there. Great, so everything's here. Okay, scrolling down. Oh, I just remembered. I don't want to use the root user all the time, so I'm going to create another user called the Elastic user at localhost, and I will use the password Elastic. And this user will have access just to the ESDB database. So grant all privileges on ES_DB .star at or to Elastic at localhost. And I'm going to use these credentials later for Logstash. So next, before we install Logstash, we should download the JDBC connector. JDBC is what allows MySQL and Logstash to talk with each other. I'm going to go to the MySQL website and I'll go to the connector download page. You will find this link in the Elastic documentation, but I will also post a link in the description of this video. So I'm going to go ahead and download the version for 20.04. And it's going to download to my Windows computer. So I'm going to open up this terminal window and just SCP it over to my MySQL Logstash virtual machine where we're doing all our work. Okay, it should be there now. So let me just close, or let me just go over here. And yep, so here it is. So all we need to do to install it is just dpkg-i, the deb package name, and just like that, it should be installed. And if I go to the usr share, and I think it's Java directory, we should see the file here now. Great, so we have the JDBC connector here. So at this point, we can install Logstash, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to pull up the documentation here, and let me scroll down. First thing we're going to do is get the public signing key. So I'll just copy this, and I'll paste it into my terminal window. Next, let's just install a dependency, and I'll paste it here. We'll update the repository definitions. I'll take this, paste it in here, and then just install Logstash with this command here. And it might take a moment. Oh, this was actually pretty quick. Anyway, Logstash should be there now. So at this point, all we need to do is set up a Logstash configuration pipeline, which Elasticsearch gives us right here. This configuration pipeline shows us 3 different stages. The first stage is the mandatory input stage, which specifies that we will be ingesting data from MySQL. This second stage is optional. It's the filter stage, and it can be used to transform data before it gets outputted. And the final stage is mandatory as well. It is the output stage. This output stage is saying dump the results to standard output. But ultimately, we want to output the results to Elasticsearch. So if I scroll down a bit, here's the code to output to Elasticsearch. So let's go ahead and create the configuration file. I'll make the new directory here, and I'll make a logstash.conf file. I've already assembled all this ahead of time, so let me just copy and paste it into this file here. And it's the same as the Elastic guide. Got my input stage, the filter stage, and for the output stage, I've already updated with my connection details to my Elastic instance. So now let's take a look at the input stage and update that. The JDBC driver library. So let me find the path. I think it was the usr share Java directory. Yep, it is. So let me just copy this and paste it in here. Okay, and next let's connect to our database. So 127.0.0.1 ESDB. We're going to use the user that we created earlier, Elastic. These 3 fields here, tracking column, use column value, and tracking column type, are used to automatically create a new SQL variable called SQL last value, which Logstash will use in our upcoming query to figure out which MySQL records have or have not been ingested yet. The SQL last value will have an updated timestamp of the last row ingested. So if we come down to the actual SQL statement that Logstash will perform, you will see that the SQL will select all fields. Then in the where clause, check which rows have not been ingested yet based on the modification time, SQL last value timestamp, and the present time. And then next, this Logstash will run every 5 seconds. And then for the filter stage, it's just moving some fields around, nothing that important. And for the output stage, I already have my connection details here. But I just remembered, we are going to have to go to Kibana and create a blank new index first. And I don't need this pipeline line. It was just something left over from my last project. So I've saved this, Now let's exit out of here, and we should head over to Kibana and create an empty index. So I'm going to log in with my super user. I'm going to go to the dev tools here. So let's just set up a blank index called project1, which is what we specified in our Logstash conf file. And I think that's it. I think we're basically ready to actually run Logstash. So let's type usr share logstash binary logstash and the location of our file. So this might take a minute or so. So I'll pause until this is running. Okay, looks like things failed, and okay, I see what's going on. Oh, so it couldn't find the configuration file. So maybe I just have to use the full path, so the absolute path to the file. And again, I'll pause until this is up and running. Okay, so it looks like things failed again, but I took a look around and I think I know why. If I open up my Logstash conf file, it's because I forgot to put in the version number for my JDBC connector. So let's go and grab that. So it's this file here. So it's 8.0.33. So I'm gonna paste that in here. And now let's try running Logstash again. And I'll pause until this is done. Great, looks like everything is working. Logstash picked up the MySQL data. So let's go to Elastic or Kibana. Let's actually look in our project1_search to see if the results appear in the Elastic index. And it does. So everything's working. We've got things going from MySQL to Logstash to Elastic. And that basically concludes this first part of the demonstration. So I'll turn off Logstash for now. In this second demonstration, I want to ingest a more complicated data structure, which I describe in this diagram. It has several one-to-many relationships. Projects can have lots of epics, each epic can have lots of stories, each story can have lots of tasks, and each task can have a lot of time entries. And once ingested, I might want an index with records that have this kind of shape. So you can see that epics are nested under projects, stories are nested under epics, tasks are nested under stories, and time or hours is nested under tasks. In a real project, you probably wouldn't want such a complicated data model because it can be difficult to query with Elastic. But I thought that what I've described here would make a good example for ingesting more complicated data structures. So let's try this out. For this second demonstration, I have all my code in a public Git repo. You can find the video description. But let me make a new directory to check it out. Oh, I don't have Git installed yet, so let me install Git. apt-get install -y git. Alright, now let me check out the project. Git init, git remote add origin, and let's get the path to the repo. And I'll check out the master branch, and it should all be here. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll go into data directory, and I'm going to set up the database with these commands here. So you can see I have a user table, a project table, the epic table, and for the epic table, there's this foreign key here, project ID, which links back to the project table. The story table has the foreign key epic ID, and the task table has the foreign key for story ID, and the time table will have a foreign key for the task ID. So that's pretty much our database. Should be complex enough. I'm going to go into my MySQL database, and let's actually create a database. We'll call it timesheet. And then I'm going to grant all privileges to the Elastic user that we set up so that Logstash can use this Elastic user to log in. All right. And now let's actually import the schema. So this will run all the create statements. All right, looks like everything is in. So let's do a show tables command to make sure that all our tables are there. Yep, they are. So now all we have to do is import some test data to work with. I have this data.sql file, and inside is a store procedure. And in the store procedure, I am going to insert some fake users, insert some projects for us to look at. And I have this vocabulary table here, which has some epic names and some story names and some tasks to go with each story. So then if I go down a little bit more, so down here, I have a very gigantic nested type of loop because I'm going to insert some epics, then insert some stories for those epics, then insert some tasks for those stories. So just a gigantic loop. And then finally, I'll just call the seed data store procedure that I created. So let's actually try to import this data. And this might take a while sometimes because it's trying to create a lot of data. Actually, it looks like it happened pretty quickly this time. So I'm going to double check if all the content is there. So let's do a show tables and let's count the number of records in our timetable. Okay, so about 80,000 records. Let's take a look at a few of them. All right, yeah, so at this point we have some test data to work with. Okay, so before we actually turn on Logstash, we should create an empty index so that Logstash can throw content in there. I'll call it timesheet. And let's actually set up the mapping as well. So I'll type in /_mapping. And I have the mapping over here in this folder, mapping timesheet.json. And I also have it here, of course, in this terminal window in the mapping directory. But coming back here, for this mapping, I didn't specify all the fields. The important thing I want to specify was the directory or the hierarchy structure of project, epic, story, and task. I'll let Elasticsearch dynamically figure out the rest of the fields. It's the hierarchy that's important. So I'll copy this, paste it in here, and let's just run it. And there we go. So the mapping should be in place. And with that done, let's actually edit our Logstash configuration file so that we can actually start using Logstash. So I already have one made here. And what I'll do is just update the path to our JDBC plugin. So it's the USR share java / the MySQL connector java.jar file. The connection to our database is this one here, but with timesheet. And to connect to our database, we'll use the Elastic credentials. Next, let's look at the query that Logstash will use to fetch data from our timesheet database. And it's this massive query right here. Let me try to reposition the window so you can see the whole query. So I won't go into details of how to construct SQL queries, but I'll quickly say that this query will return 3 columns. Column 1 will be project.project_id, which is a number. Column 2 will be project.project_name, which is a string. And column 3 will be epics, which is a JSON string of an array of epics, which then nests an array of stories, which then nests an array of tasks, which then nests an array of hours. So I'm going to copy this query just to test it out. I'm going to go to my MySQL terminal, go into timesheet database, and let's just paste this command and try it out. And there it is. So we can see a lot of the serialized JSON content in there. This window just ran out of buffer, so I can't scroll up to show you the results again, but at least you saw it momentarily flash across the screen. There is one issue that we need to be aware of, and that is when Elasticsearch ingests the columns of our query, it will see the project ID as a number, which is good, and it will see the project name as a string, and that's also good. But what's bad is that Elasticsearch will see the epochs column as a string. We need to tell Elasticsearch to parse the epochs column as a JSON data type. And to do this, we need to set up an ingestion pipeline. So we'll do that next. I have the pipeline definition here in this pipeline directory in the timesheet.json. So here you see a definition. There's only one processor, the JSON processor for the field epochs. So let's paste that definition into Kibana here. So put underscore ingest pipeline. We'll call this pipeline timesheet. And then I'll paste and run. And that should be it. Our pipeline for processing the epochs field should be in place. So let's head over to the output section, and I will put in my Elastic connection details. We are using SSL, the Elastic user with the password Elastic. Let's throw all the data into the timesheet index. Yep, so our index is called timesheet, and we need to use the timesheet ingestion pipeline, which is that one. Great, so I think that should be it. Let's save this, and we should be able to run it. Let's run Logstash. So it is usr share Logstash binary or bin Logstash -f, then the path to our configuration file. And I'll pause until this thing is loaded up. Oh, looks like it's working. And I think all the content should be in the Elasticsearch index now. So let's go over here and let's do a search in the timesheet index. All right, so get timesheet underscore search. All right, we're getting results back. And we can see that the project information is here. Epochs, stories is in epochs. We've got tasks in stories, and we've got hours in tasks. So it looks like everything is here. I'm just gonna look a little bit further down. Yeah, I see task names. Let's see if the epoch names are here. Yep, the epoch name is here as well. So with that, that's basically all there is for the second demonstration. Now, before we go, I automated all these steps for the second demonstration. So let me revert the changes for the configuration file. And then let me make a copy of this env.sample file. Okay, now let's edit the env file. Now, if I fill out the project path, it's basically the current working directory. So root project 2, right? Hold on, let me see. Yeah, root project 2. And let's type in the location of our JDBC jar file. Right, okay, so that is the correct path. I just have to change that version number. Our database is called timesheet. And it's going to be Elastic. And for my Elastic domain, it's elastic.evermite.net. And we are using SSL, so I'll type true here. And these are the super admin credentials for my Elastic. So if you want to rerun this whole demonstration, just use my run.sh file, which uses the Elasticsearch API to repeat all the steps that we just did. So for example, the first step is to set up a new index called timesheet. Then we'll paste in the timesheet mapping to the timesheet index. Oh, let me set the line numbers in case it's clearer. All right, and then we will set up our pipeline for the timesheet so that it parses the epics column as a JSON content type. And then we do some variable substitution against our logstash.conf just so that we have all the right JDBC paths, the right MySQL credentials, and the correct Elastic credentials. And then we just go ahead and run Logstash with this final command. And I also have this teardown script which deletes our timesheet index and our pipeline so that we can clean everything out before running things. So let's just do the teardown now. And now I'll do the run, which might take a moment, so I'll pause until this is done. All right, looks like everything is done. And if I do a search against this timesheet index, it should give the same results as last time. Yeah, so this looks good. Let me just scroll down a bit. Yep, looks like everything's here. And that concludes this tutorial. If you found this video helpful, then give us a like. You can also subscribe to our channel to stay informed of videos as we release them. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments, or you can contact us through our website. See you in the next video.